Lami's heart sank as she watched the glittering Cartier watch slip onto her brother's wrist. Her parents clapped and cheered, their smiles wide, but not for her. When the photographer called for the family photo, Lami realized the cruel truth. She wasn't included. Not even a glance. A quiet rage bubbled inside her. This public humiliation was intentional, and Lami knew she couldn't stay silent. Something had to change. Lami stepped into the grand hall, her heart hoping for smiles and hugs, but immediately felt a cold weight in the air. The room sparkled with decorations, flowers, and twinkling lights. Yet all she noticed was her parents' eyes shining, not at her, but at her brother. He stood at the center, laughing as they placed a gleaming Cartier watch on his wrist. The gold and diamonds reflected the chandelier above, catching everyone's attention. Guests clapped, cheered, and took endless photos of him, praising his charm and achievements. Lami's stomach twisted as she realized not one person looked her way, not even a nod. She had imagined hugs, warmth, maybe even a small recognition, but nothing came. Each cheer for him felt like a quiet stab, a reminder that she was invisible in her own family's eyes. She forced a smile, her hands trembling slightly, while inside, a storm of hurt and frustration began to grow. The joy she had hoped to feel that night disappeared, replaced by a sharp, quiet ache that whispered she was being overlooked on purpose. As the celebration continued around her, laughter and applause filling the hall, Lami felt smaller and smaller, standing alone in the shadows of her brother's bright moment. The photographer clapped his hands and called for everyone to gather for the family photo. Lami quickly moved toward her parents, expecting to stand beside them, maybe even smile for the picture, but then she froze. Her parents subtly shifted, creating space only for her brother. He stood proudly in the middle, beaming, while her parents' arms reached around him, leaving a noticeable gap where she should have been. The photographer adjusted his camera and started giving directions, but no one looked at her. Lami's chest tightened, a hot wave of shock and embarrassment rushing through her. She felt invisible, like she didn't exist in that perfect, polished family image. Guests whispered and laughed, but not a single word came for her. Her heart sank as she realized it wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand still and maintain a calm face, though her hands were shaking. Her cheeks burned, and she felt a tear wanting to escape, but she blinked it back. Every clap, every flash of the camera, every smile aimed at her brother felt like it was carved into her. A public proof of favoritism she couldn't ignore. In that moment, something shifted inside her. Instead of breaking down, she felt a quiet, fierce determination rising. She would not allow herself to be forgotten, overlooked, or humiliated again. This exclusion, though painful, became a spark. She silently promised herself that she would reclaim her dignity, show her worth, and make them see her value in a way they could never ignore. The photo was taken, the clicks of the camera filling the air, but Lami barely noticed. Her mind was already racing with thoughts of how she would rise above this, how she would turn the shame they tried to give her into strength. Standing there, left out of the picture, she felt small for a moment, but deep inside, a fire had ignited, a fire that would not be silenced, a fire that would change everything. Later that night, Lami sat alone in her room, the soft glow of her desk lamp casting shadows on the walls. The party was over, the guests had gone, and the echoes of laughter and camera clicks still lingered in her mind. She hugged her knees, trying to make sense of the hurt she felt. Slowly, she began to think about herself, not the way her parents saw her, but the real Lami. She remembered the long nights studying for her degree, the countless hours she spent working to earn her promotion, and the personal goals she had achieved one by one. She had built her life step by step, often quietly, without needing anyone to notice. The more she thought, the more she realized that her worth had never depended on her parents' approval. She was strong, smart, and capable on her own. Yet a part of her still ached. Being left out of the family photo and watching the celebration focused only on her brother had left a sting she couldn't ignore. Lami understood that while she didn't need their validation to feel proud of herself, making them understand her value might require a different approach. It wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about visibility, respect, and undeniable recognition. She pictured her achievements, her promotion, her recent awards, the investments she had managed, and the ways she had quietly made a mark in her career and community. Each thought strengthened her resolve. She realized that if she could create a moment where her accomplishments could shine in front of everyone, including her parents and brother, it would not just prove her success, but also demand the respect she deserved. Lamy felt a flicker of excitement mixed with determination. She would not let their favoritism define her. She would plan carefully, making sure her talents, hard work, and achievements could no longer be ignored or overshadowed. Sitting there in the quiet of her room, she allowed herself a small smile. For the first time that night, she felt a sense of control returning, a feeling that she could turn the humiliation into something powerful. The night became a turning point in her mind. She wasn't just reflecting on pain. She was plotting a path forward, one that would make her parents and everyone else see her in the way she had always known she deserved: successful, confident, and unshakably worthy. That quiet reflection became her first step toward reclaiming her dignity and proving her value in a way that no one could deny. Over the next few days, Lamy became quiet but very alert. She watched her family closely, noticing every little detail that showed how her brother was always treated differently. When her parents praised him for small things, she wrote it down. When they gave him gifts, extra attention, or invited him to special outings, she kept a careful note. Even the smallest comments, the way they smiled at him, or how they always asked him about his plans first, were recorded. Lamy also paid attention to how her brother reacted, noticing the way he basked in the attention, often unaware of the effect it had on her. She watched every family gathering, every dinner conversation, and every casual moment, storing it in her mind and jotting it in her notebook. She noticed how she was often interrupted, her opinions ignored, or her achievements barely mentioned, while her brother's successes were celebrated loudly and repeatedly. Each observation added to a growing list, a clear pattern she could not deny. Lamy felt a mix of anger and determination. She realized that this wasn't just one party or one mistake. It was a consistent behavior that showed favoritism in its purest form. Writing everything down made her feel more in control, like she had a weapon of truth she could use later. She even started keeping track of social interactions, noting who in the family noticed her and who didn't, who cheered for her brother, and who overlooked her completely. The process was tiring, but Lamy knew it was necessary. Each note she made, each pattern she documented, gave her a sense of power she hadn't felt before. She was building undeniable proof, a record she could rely on when the time came to assert herself. With every observation, her plan became clearer. She could see exactly where the favoritism happened, how often, and in what ways it affected her. This careful gathering of evidence made her feel less powerless and more prepared. She didn't have to guess anymore. She had facts. And with these facts, she knew she could show her parents, her brother, and even others, that the way she was treated was unfair. By the end of the week, Lamy's notebook was filled with clear, detailed examples. Each entry was a piece of the story she was building. A story that would one day demand attention, respect, and recognition. She felt a quiet excitement, knowing that the power to change how she was seen was slowly shifting into her hands. Lamy called Sarah that evening, feeling the need to share everything she had observed. Sarah listened carefully as Lamy explained how her parents always favored her brother, how gifts, praise, and attention were reserved for him, and how she had been deliberately excluded from the family photo. Sarah didn't just sympathize. She asked questions, helping Lamy see the bigger picture. "This isn't about getting even," Sarah said gently. "It's about showing your worth in a way they cannot ignore." Her words hit Lamy in just the right way. She realized that anger or petty revenge would only make her look desperate or bitter, while a calm, smart approach could give her undeniable authority and respect. Over the next few hours, they brainstormed ideas together. They discussed how Lamy could highlight her achievements in front of the right people, how she could create situations where her parents and brother would have no choice but to acknowledge her success. Sarah suggested subtle but powerful ways to command attention, through accomplishments, events, and public moments that naturally drew admiration. Lamy felt a spark of excitement. She began to see a path forward that was both elegant and effective. They broke the plan into steps. First, Lamy would gather proof of her work, awards, and successes, making sure she could present them confidently without boasting. Next, she would create opportunities to showcase her accomplishments to her social circles, friends, and family. The goal wasn't to humiliate anyone but to let her achievements speak for themselves, leaving no room for favoritism to hide behind. Sarah reminded her to remain calm, composed, and graceful throughout. Confidence is stronger than anger, she said. When you show your worth calmly, they can't argue or ignore it. They have to respect it. Lami nodded, feeling the truth of it. She didn't want to scream or fight. She wanted to rise above, to make her presence undeniable. By the end of the night, Lami had a clear strategy. She would use her intelligence, hard work, and success as tools to assert her value. The plan was not about revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity and earning respect in a way that no one could question. She felt a new sense of control and purpose. The pain of exclusion and favoritism no longer felt like a trap, but a challenge she could overcome. With Sarah's guidance and her own determination, Lami knew she was ready to take the next steps, turning hurt into power, invisibility into undeniable presence, and being overlooked into being recognized. She went to sleep that night feeling calm, focused, and quietly unstoppable. Lami spent weeks planning the charity gala with careful attention to every detail. She wanted it to be elegant but not flashy, meaningful but also impressive. Invitations were sent to close friends, business associates, and importantly to her family, including the same people who had attended her parents' anniversary. She didn't announce it loudly. Instead, she wanted the element of surprise to make her presence unforgettable. The night of the gala arrived, and the hall was beautifully decorated with soft lights, flowers, and a polished stage for presentations. Guests mingled, sipping drinks and admiring the subtle elegance of the event, completely unaware of the quiet storm about to unfold. Lami arrived just as the crowd was settling. She stepped into the hall in a sleek, tailored dress, her posture straight, her smile calm but magnetic. Every eye in the room turned toward her immediately. Whispers floated through the air. "Is that Lami? She looks incredible." She moved with poise and confidence, greeting people warmly but briefly, letting her presence speak louder than her words. Her parents, who had not expected her to attend in such style, stiffened when they saw her. Her brother's jaw dropped slightly, and he tried to smile, but it faltered as he realized that tonight, the spotlight was on Lami. The gala had a purpose beyond elegance. Lami had prepared carefully, arranging subtle ways to highlight her accomplishments without seeming boastful. Awards she had earned, charitable projects she had contributed to, and professional achievements were all showcased through speeches, visuals, and casual conversations. Guests noticed her influence, her charisma, and her ability to bring people together for a good cause. The contrast between the way she carried herself and the shallow attention her brother had received at the anniversary was clear. People admired her quietly, and she could see the respect forming in their eyes. Her parents, usually so focused on their favorite child, could not ignore her now. Every handshake, every compliment, and every smile she received made it obvious that she had become the center of admiration. Not by demanding it, but by creating an event that naturally highlighted her value. Lami felt a thrill of satisfaction, a quiet triumph swelling inside her. She was not angry. She was not desperate. She was in control, commanding attention with grace, dignity, and undeniable presence. The gala was more than an event. It was her statement, her way of showing that she mattered, that she had earned respect, and that she could shine in a way no one could overlook. By the time she mingled with the guests, it was clear. Tonight, the family and the social circle were seeing Lami for the first time, not just as a daughter or sister, but as a force of elegance, intelligence, and success. As the gala moved forward, Lami guided the evening with a calm and natural grace. She didn't rush to the stage or demand anyone's attention. Instead, she let her presence grow steadily through soft conversations and gentle moments of sharing. When a colleague introduced her to a group of guests, he proudly mentioned her recent promotion. Lami smiled modestly, adding only a few words about how hard work and patience had brought her to that point. Another guest asked about her current projects, and she mentioned a charity initiative she had been funding, explaining how it supported children in underprivileged schools. People listened closely, nodding with admiration, clearly impressed by her sense of purpose. Later in the evening, one of the organizers announced her recent award for excellence in her field. The crowd applauded warmly, and though Lami simply bowed her head with gratitude, the moment was powerful. Guests exchanged whispers, remarking on how much she had achieved without making noise about it. Unlike her brother, who flaunted his expensive watch at the anniversary party, Lami's success shone through her work, her discipline, and her elegance. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, added to her quiet influence. When asked about her personal life, she spoke briefly about the investments she had made, sharing how she had turned small beginnings into strong opportunities. She didn't boast or brag. She explained with honesty, making her journey sound both inspiring and relatable. Many of the younger guests leaned closer, eager to learn from her, while the older ones nodded in respect. The whispers grew stronger now, rippling through the room like an undeniable truth. Lami was not just another face in the family. She was a woman of substance. Her parents, seated nearby, could not miss the change in the atmosphere. Everywhere they looked, people admired Lami, speaking her name with respect and curiosity. Her brother shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the Cartier watch he had been so proud of suddenly looked shallow in comparison to the accomplishments his sister carried so naturally. The extravagance that once seemed bright now appeared empty beside Lami's quiet strength. As the evening unfolded, it became clear to everyone that her success was not an accident. It was the result of years of hard work, persistence, and intelligence. Lami didn't need flashy gifts or forced applause to shine. She was shining on her own. By the end of the night, admiration for her filled the room, and the contrast between her quiet achievements and her brother's showy moments was impossible to ignore. When her parents and brother entered the gala, they expected just another gathering, but the moment they walked in, they were struck by what they saw. The room was filled with admiration directed toward Lami. Guests surrounded her, smiling, shaking her hand, and complimenting her on the elegant event. She stood tall in the middle of it all, speaking with calm authority, her confidence shining through every gesture. For the first time, her parents noticed that people weren't talking about their son or his expensive watch. They were talking about Lami, her achievements, and the way she carried herself with grace and intelligence. Her brother tried to laugh loudly, to pull attention toward himself, but the effect was weak. Even his closest friends found themselves more interested in Lami's story, asking her questions and congratulating her on her success. The Cartier watch, once the highlight of the anniversary party, looked meaningless now compared to the respect Lami commanded. Her parents exchanged uneasy glances, realizing the weight of what they had done, how they had excluded her, how they had overlooked her, how they had pushed her aside for so long. In this room, with their social circle watching, the favoritism that once seemed normal now appeared cruel and unfair. As they sat down, they couldn't escape the whispers floating around them. Guests marveled at how Lami had organized such a beautiful event, and praised her for her accomplishments. Some even compared her calm strength to her brother's flashy displays, a comparison that left her parents visibly uncomfortable. They suddenly saw how small their earlier gestures of favoritism looked against the reality of Lami's true worth. Her mother's eyes followed Lami as she moved gracefully from one group to another, engaging with charm and poise. Her father's jaw tightened as he realized that this daughter, the one they had often ignored, had become the pride of the room. The thought stung, because it exposed the truth. They had failed to recognize her value until now, and it was everyone else who showed them what they should have seen all along. Lami didn't glare at them, or show any bitterness. Instead, she treated them with the same calm politeness she offered others, which only deepened their shame. They realized she didn't need them to shine. She was already shining on her own. The memory of leaving her out of the family photo replayed in their minds, now looking petty and heartless compared to this moment. For the first time, guilt settled heavily on their shoulders, and they understood that their favoritism had cost them more than they thought. It had cost them the chance to stand proudly beside their daughter long before this night. As the evening slowed down, a small circle of guests gathered around Lami and her family. The conversation was light at first, but Lami knew this was the moment to speak. She turned to her parents, her voice calm and steady, but her eyes held a quiet strength. "Mother, father," she said softly, "I have one question I've carried with me since your anniversary. Why was I left out of the family photo?" The words cut through the air, and silence quickly fell over the group. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned closer, waiting for the answer. Her parents froze, caught off guard. Her mother opened her mouth as if to explain, but no words came. Her father avoided her eyes, staring at the floor instead. Lamy didn't raise her voice or show anger. She simply continued, her tone measured and dignified. I stood there, watching as you smiled and posed together, she said. It was as if I didn't exist. I have worked hard, achieved so much. Yet I was treated like an outsider in my own family. Respect and recognition are not gifts you give only to one child. They are earned by those who put in the effort, who build their path with integrity. Her words were sharp but controlled, each sentence falling with undeniable truth. Guests exchanged glances, their expressions mixed with sympathy for Lamy and quiet disapproval toward her parents. Her brother shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable under the weight of her calm truth. Her parents, who once believed their favoritism was normal, now felt exposed in front of people whose opinions mattered to them. Lamy didn't let the silence scare her. She stood taller, her presence commanding. I don't need extravagant gifts or staged photographs to prove my worth, she continued. I am proud of who I am and what I have achieved, but what hurts is knowing that my own parents chose to ignore me, to treat me as if I wasn't part of the family. That choice was yours, not mine. Her words hung in the air, heavy and unforgettable. Her parents finally lifted their eyes to her, guilt written across their faces. For once, they couldn't argue, couldn't make excuses. The truth was too clear, and everyone around them had heard it. The guests remained silent, respecting the gravity of the moment. Lamy didn't push further. She had said enough, and her dignity remained intact. By speaking calmly and with strength, she forced her parents to reflect on their behavior, leaving them with the weight of their own actions while she stood tall, unshaken, and fully in control. Lamy looked around the circle of guests, her calm eyes finally resting on her parents. She took a deep breath and spoke with steady confidence, her voice carrying enough strength to silence even the faintest whisper. I am proud of myself, she said, her tone neither bitter nor loud, just firm and unshakable. My worth isn't measured by gifts or photos. Respect is earned, and I will not let favoritism define me. The words struck like a quiet thunder. Her parents froze, their lips pressed tightly together, unable to find an answer. The same people who had once celebrated excluding her now sat speechless, their power stripped away by her truth. Her brother shifted uneasily beside them, his usual pride shrinking as he realized that no expensive watch could compare to the authority and dignity his sister carried in that moment. The guests around them remained completely silent, watching the scene unfold with admiration. They had seen many things that night, her grace, her achievements, her quiet success, but this statement sealed it all. It wasn't just about Lamy being ignored once. It was about her finally drawing a line, declaring that she would never again allow anyone, not even her family, to decide her worth. Her parents' eyes flickered with regret, but Lamy didn't wait for their apologies. She had already said what needed to be said. She smiled gently, turned away from the table, and walked through the room with her head held high. Every step she took felt lighter, filled with the freedom of finally choosing herself above all else. Guests parted respectfully to let her pass, many nodding in quiet admiration. Her brother watched her leave, a sinking realization filling him. For years he had been placed on a pedestal, but in just one evening, Lamy had shown everyone who truly carried the strength of the family. She didn't need favoritism, she didn't need their approval, she had built her own respect, and it shone brighter than anything money could buy. As Lamy exited the gala, the air around her felt different. She was no longer the invisible daughter left out of a photograph. She was a woman who had faced her pain, transformed it into power, and reclaimed her dignity in front of everyone who once overlooked her. The humiliation she once carried had turned into triumph, and she walked away not broken but victorious, fully in control of her life and her story.